I can hear you PC going at it.
I heard a cat.
Yes. I mean, if the cats annoy you, I can keep them outside of the room.
No, we have one of our VIP piece is even just here for the cat cam.
Oh,
So actually,
cute. You want to see
I
my
did
cat?
send you. Yes, absolutely.
That's
Oh, this is a Bengal.
yes, it's Tonka. Here's
Wow.
Tonka. She doesn't
Hello.
like to be held, but I'm gonna hold her for you.
Oh, look at this.
Hey everyone. Yeah,
Hi.
say hi, Tonka. Good job. And her brother is nowhere to be seen, probably sleeping. But I have to feed them in an hour. Yes, I know you're hungry, but I can't feed you now.
So,
Yes, we're live. Awesome.
okay. I'm not entirely sure if the co-streaming works on Twitch, but I think everything is
working.
Everything is as perfect as it can be.
Yes.
See, there we go. Just here for the cat cam is here, Master Blaster here.
Perfect.
It's here, Outdoor Express is here.
Awesome.
Hi.
Hey everybody.
So there we go.
Nice to have you here.
So before we start, I'll directly start with a shout out, and then we'll jump into. We have 2 podcasts today. The first hour will be me interviewing Jack about his path. And you heard me talking about his game and him as a person already millions of times. So I'm super excited that we finally have him here. And the second half will be vice versa. So Jack has also the podcast called the Generalist. Generalists.
Yeah.
That's why I check the Generalist, and the podcast is the Generalists. And this will be the second part. He interviewing me, if I understand this correctly, or like talking.
We're gonna talk. Yeah, I'm gonna interview you for sure. For sure.
We're gonna talk. Okay, but first of all, like everyone, please, this is the shout out for Jack. He's also streaming a lot on Twitch. Yes. Probably more than I am.
A little bit of the pitch here. Basically, what I do is something called Let's Learn, which is similar to Let's Plays, but with online courses.
Oh,
that's it.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Yes, we learn together on the stream.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit the record button now, and then we're in the first podcast.
Let's go. All right.
Perfect. So welcome to another episode of the Talking Dev podcast. I'm more than excited to that we can finally talk to Jack the generalist on Twitch, the Generalists podcast on YouTube, known for a game I was talking about thousands of times, which is called Path Out. But there are also very interesting other projects we're going to talk about today, known as VFX Artist. And I just learned that's also a lot of tutorial videos, I think, happening on YouTube. But I think I'll just jump directly to you. How would you introduce yourself?
Oh, that's a tough question, because it's the hardest thing that it's a hard challenge to introduce myself, because I do so much and I like to go into multidisciplinary stuff. So that's why I named myself Jack the Generalist, because I just am a curious person and I'm interested in different sections of game development, game art. So yeah, I guess a short way to say it, I'm a curious person. My name is Jack and I am 29 years old by the recording of this video. I'm originally from Syria, so I'm a Syrian refugee living in Europe, basically. And that's where the game Path Out comes in mind, as it's basically telling the story of my escape from the civil war. And that's how me and Johanna got to know each other.
Yes, this is like the one game I'm pretty much every single talk I'm giving, every single thing I'm writing about. This is like my go-to example of how this medium is used in a very beautiful way, let's put it that way. Before we talk about Path Out, I would like to go in an entirely different route and really talk about you, where you, like whatever you want to tell us, but basically, where are you coming from? What is your first games you played? What is like Tiny Czech, all the young Czech, Tiny Czech experiences you want to share with us?
Yeah, definitely. So I was always a shy kid, but I didn't really know it. So from the beginning, I got raised in Syria, I got born in Syria, in a huge family. Like, for example, my father had 14 brothers and sisters. My mother had 14 brothers and sisters, and they all had children and grandchildren. So I come from a huge family where we met every week. Every Friday we went to a different uncle to have like a huge feast, basically. So yeah, I come from that background. So when I was young, I literally thought that I'm this social person. I had really a lot of confidence because I had a lot of people backing me up when I ever had a problem or something. But then the war started. And when the war started, everything changed. All of a sudden, I'm not allowed to go to visit anymore. I'm not allowed to be on the streets anymore. I'm not allowed to, have a social life, which was tough, especially in that time. I was young. I was like basically turning into a teenager in the beginning of all of this. And so games became a huge part of my life, which they were already, but now they became like the portal basically to get out of that reality, if you may. So my connection with games have always been, special in the sense of it being, me believing it's a medium that can expand beyond profit, beyond just fun, but also to tell a message, to make someone feel like they're in a whole different reality, in a whole different world. So yeah, I guess that is my upbringing, a little bit like basically briefly said, yeah.
This is, so I have to make a spoiler here because I had a little interview before with you already for a different thing, but you mentioned so many games, if I may add this, for you that were inspiring at this, probably with this train of thought, right? Which I did not really expect. Do you want to go there? Do you want to share some of those?
Yeah, so there are a lot of games that have helped me either develop empathy. I would say develop empathy, especially towards people or people of color that otherwise not playing those games could have ended up in me becoming, or looking to a certain people of color in a different way. Why? Because my upbringing, my parents, the culture, I wouldn't say the general culture in Syria, but like my parents had a certain view about people with a certain color, like black people, for example, which I only knew afterwards, like when I arrived to Europe, when I was like on the dating scene, right? And I was like telling my mom, hey, look, I'm talking to this girl, and she was black, and the first comment from my mom was like, are you gonna ruin our race or whatever? So that was a huge shock for me, and I was reflecting on myself, like, how did I not pick up that energy? Like, how did I not pick up that thing from my mom, right? And the first thing came in my mind, I was like, oh, I played GTA San Andreas. Like, I was basically playing a black character. And even though San Andreas plays a lot on stereotypes, I like the boldness of it. They did not make black people like in an alien skin with like different flags, or no, they just made them, as they are in reality, like humans. And even though it's stereotypical, the story that they're telling, but the fact that they portrayed a black story with black characters made me not develop this way of thinking about black people that I could have just carried on from my mom, for example. And yeah, that is where I think games enhance empathy in a way. And I learned that very early on.
This is interesting. Do you think there are specific games which do this really well, or are there certain games which do it really poorly?
I think most of games do it poorly, honestly, especially with Arabs, like growing up an Arab. A lot of games do this where Arabs are the bad guys, the bearded, bad guys that don't, that deserve to be killed, and you should not feel any mercy or whatever. Killing them, it should be actually fun to do that. So I think more games did damage than actually portrayed like people of color or queer people or women in a better lens, or in an actual human lens. But I guess for the lack of examples, I would go with GTA San Andreas, because I don't really have many examples that from the top of my head. But I do feel like we did a good job with Path Out, honestly.
Do you already feel like going to the direction of Path Out? But maybe maybe first of all, like, I would be really interested how did you get from being this gaming person to then getting into game development? What was the path there?
That was an interesting path, because so I don't know if you're all aware of the story, especially in 2015, when there was like this news that was everywhere of the kid who died his parents tried to cross to Europe from Turkey, and that kid was dead in Bodrum, the Turkish city. That night, I almost died too. So we've had a failed attempt, and we almost died, me and my brother, coming to Europe. And in that day, after we survived, I remember looking up the sky, looking at the stars, and saying, Jack, if you ever arrive, if you ever make this in the future, you will follow your dreams. And since I was a kid, I would be asked in school, for example, like, it's a common question in Syria to be asked as a kid, hey, what do you want to be in the future? What do you want to study in the future, or whatever? And it will always be like, the common answer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. And I just said, I want to make Need for Speed games. That's what I said. Like, I was like, I'm going to work in games. That's what I want to do. And I'll be laughed at, right? Which will come in full circle later on to a moment when, with Path Out, something happened. We'll cover it later on. But yeah, that was the connection of turning from gaming to making games. Is basically, I almost died, and I promised myself, if I ever make it to Europe, where there's an equal chance like everyone else, which is not true, by the way, but there is a chance at least. I would basically chase my dreams no matter what. It's a fair chance. It's not equal chance, it's a fair chance.
You are always like, what I noticed, you're very active also in giving a voice to people who might be underrepresented, who don't have the strong voice. It sounds like this is also coming from your own experiences in that realm.
So the main reason for that is I honestly believe if there is no diversity in games, there will be soon no games anymore. Like, that's a deep belief I have, and I could back it up with my theories. But I do believe like ideas and success in games in general comes from diversity of opinions, diversity of background, and representation. That's what I honestly believe in, and I think we should advocate for. We should be like, if you have a platform, you should be the voice of the voiceless, basically. Be able to share the stories of people who their stories are not shared as much. And this can be anybody. This could be the juniors who don't get to talk about their experience as much, like junior artists, for example. They're the most underrepresented people in the whole industry, because they're just there to shut their mouth and learn. That's the general premise. But that's sad, because like even when I invite, especially like junior level women in the industry, they will always decline and tell me that they're not good enough. And I would always say that is not my criteria, but they would never accept again. That's it. They're not good enough. They're convinced that they're not good enough. And that is sad, because I think everybody's perspective matter here. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are in your skills. That is the problem we have in game development, is that we literally attach our identity to our skills. The problem is with that is once you get laid off, which I don't hope for anybody, you start losing yourself. And I think we need to cover that.
Let me go back to your path, because I find it so interesting where you, like, again, you seem extremely reflected, I think it makes, like, to make someone think in a reflected way like this. I think there's a lot of things going on and that happened in the past. So tell us, let's jump into the story of Path Out. Mm-hmm. How did it start? How did what was your role there? How was this experience?
So Path Out is a fun story because
Oh, forgive me, but we need to quickly introduce Path Out for everyone who does not know it. The link will be certainly in the notes, but maybe you introduce us quickly.
I think I cannot introduce Path Out without the people that worked on Path Out with me, right? And my involvement was, I would say, not as much as everyone else that was involved with the game. So basically, Path Out came about. Let me introduce it first. Path Out is a game where you play an 18-year-old Syrian kid that escapes Syria, and you play all the potential possibilities to escape, the civil war back in 2014, right? And it's a JRPG, so it's made in a cute style. It's very simple game, up, left, right, down. You get to discuss things with your uncle and things like that. It's very human-based, so there's no political agendas or whatever. It's just telling the story, and that kid that you play is basically me. So every now and then in the game, whenever you achieve certain milestones, I'll be commenting in like a Let's Play style video, speaking to the player, where they could actually see that they are playing an actual person, right? Do you want me to go into the story of development? Okay, so the development started basically where I was lucky enough to meet the people at Kalza Creations, Georg Hubmeier, and Brian Main. And so with Georg Hubmeier especially, we were having a breakfast, as was the case where I was trying to network in Austria, where I wasn't allowed to work. So I had a lot of time on my mind, and that's actually how we met. I was at a play, and his wife was playing, and I just approached her because I was interested in acting and stuff like that, and she was like, "Nah, my boyfriend at the time, he makes games," and I was like, "Cool, I need to connect with that guy," right? So I invited him for a breakfast, and while we were, having Syrian breakfast, the idea came about as a joke. It's like, what if we make a game about your story? And Kalza Creations was already making games that were similar in message. They were already exploring that forum of games beyond, profit, for cultural games, serious games, if you may. And that was a good fit. It was like the perfect fit for the perfect time. It was like the good person, the right person at the right time. Everything was fitting. And then Georg Hubmeier basically went on and did all the work with like finding fundings and stuff like that, which made the actual game become more possible. Georg Hubmeier introduced me to Brian Main, which is still my mentor till this day. Brian Main is a American illustrator in Vienna. So I was able to speak English to him all the time, and he was able to teach me and show me things. And eventually the plan was, of course, that I get very involved in the art of the game and be hired and all of that. But my interview took time and everything went against it. So life happened. So I was more involved in the co-design phase. So when we're brainstorming and designing how the game would be like, and I'll be involved in that and also in the story. So one of the major design elements that made it into the final game that I was part of is, of course, having me as the commentary in the game. And yeah, that was basically my involvement at the beginning. And then the production started. I was not part of that. But early on with the conceptual phase, I was there. And then the game came out, and there was a lot of work after the game came out with representing the game, being there on events and PR, basically PR and marketing, trying to talk to publishers, trying to get publishers interested, because the game is basically still a demo. It still is a demo. But the cool thing is that since there was not so many games like it at that time that were talking about a refugee, like an actual real story, it was on the news everywhere. So it caught up this huge wave of interest from the media. Yeah, briefly said, that's the story.
This is also what I figured back then. It was immense how big it was covered in the news. I think it's such an important topic, and it was, I think, that's why I really love it as an example, because first of all, it was a very smart game. The way game design choices were made, I think were really smart. I really love the concept. I have to, like you already mentioned this, but I have to underline this. I really love this concept that you have this cute pixel figure, basically representing you, and all of a sudden you pop up as a comment, commenting on what is actually happening and saying, yeah, I still have some quotes of you actually in the back of my head every time I think of this game, and this is really powerful, this media mix, because this is something, and again, the game for me, it works in so many ways. It is something which is relatively short. I'm a huge fan of shorter games. I think we do have not enough of those which tell a personal story, which can be then played in an evening or so. And I think like this game made it so accessible. So I think, and then being covered in the news, this was a no-brainer because it told such an important story. It gave attention to the story, to the cause, but also to games as a medium to transport such a cause. That's why I really applauded the whole project. Again, from every perspective, telling the object of the cause, but also the way it was designed and representing games. So yeah, you see, I'm very excited about that.
No, I mean, hearing that, because like that was the main idea that I think me and the team wanted to like reflect on, or like try to people think about, which is like games can be explored beyond profit. Games can be an art form to tell stories, to invoke empathy, or just show a human perspective. They can do that, in my opinion, better than any other medium, like arguably so, honestly, because I hate the word shifting perspective or changing perspective. I think it's more of an expanding. It expands your perspective because like you make those tiny realities that now everybody get to experience, and they could expand their knowledge the way they want. The cool thing about games is that they have the choice. You're not like, I feel like sometimes with movies or like things that we watch, if they are not done well, the actual topic gets dumbed down a little bit. Like they're making you feel the way they want you to feel. And I don't think games do that a lot. I think games allow, even if they do that where they invoke like an epic music or a sad music, the choice is still yours to feel the way you want to feel, you know?
I have the weirdest in-between question, but what is a Syrian breakfast?
Well, Syrian breakfast includes a lot of carbohydrates. What is it? We have a drink that is sugar with some tea, and a lot of olives, and a lot of eggs, and a lot of beans. That's a Syrian breakfast. A lot of jokes.
That's actually nice.
Yeah,
this was very explicit, like. Part of the story.
It's definitely an experience, but I can tell you because I have experienced like Syrian breakfast, which could be as simple as olive oil with I don't know what it's called in English. In German, it's called thymian. Thymes, I guess.
Thyme, yes.
Literally, this is something we eat. So one of the things that I did early on as a refugee, where we only got like 300 euros a month, is to literally live. I would pay 2 euros a week to live. And I would just eat the Syrian breakfast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just to save money. Imagine.
Wow. I don't want to... Yeah. So the main idea of this podcast is also to learn about you as basically this mix of... Because I'm always so excited about getting to know the people behind games, and there's so much, because as you mentioned before, games are such an art form, and I don't care if it's AAA games or indie games, but of course specifically indie games. But I think like every one of us creating something is putting something of ourselves in there, and I would love to like get a little bit started. Where do you, like the easy question? Hey, Jack, where do you get your inspirations from?
Well, that's interesting. Where do I get my inspiration from? Most of my inspiration comes from my life. I think I've just discovered that, honestly, because I've read Fauzi Masmar's book about creativity, and I think he says something very smart there about that the most unique thing in the world is you yourself. basically, you and your experience. That's the most unique thing in the universe to you, and to other people too. So yeah, that basically is where I get most of my inspiration from. Just my life mostly, but also I do my best to get inspiration from other games and the way they make things.
And what are some games which you would have at the top of your head, which do this well, or which did inspire you? Again, I think inspiration can go both ways. It can be also games which did inspire you how to not do things.
I mean, basically you said it. Like, inspiring me, my inspiration came from the almost desperation from the fact that Arabs are so misrepresented and not presented as humans as much. So I didn't want to make a game where where I just want to, how to say, like, make Arabs seem as heroes or whatever. I just wanted to make a game where it just is saying Arabs are humans. You know, this kid had to escape the war, circumstances happen, life happens. 1 second you will be playing your Xbox, watching your movies, and the next moment you have to flee. This is the story of why you see people on the boat on the news, right? Not just see people on the boat in the news and just listen to what Fox News or whoever thinks about them or how they labelize them. So instead of that, just having the fact that, all right, so what happened to that kid? Why is it all men? That's also a question that comes a lot when it comes to refugees. Like, why is it all men? Why is there not so many women? Well, if you're 18, you have to join the military, right? And if you don't, then you join the other factions if you want to. Both is blood. If you're not gonna die, someone else is gonna die. Are you willing to kill your own people? Yes or no? And it's just simple yes or no question. If no, then what is the outcome? Well, you flee. You risk your own life. And I was fine with risking my own life instead of risking someone else's life, you know?
Wow. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. This is, how was it for you? Because again, like we're back to this mixture of your inspiration, and it's always going back to Path Out somehow. It's basically a part of your life, like an autobiography, basically in form of a video game, of a game. How does this feel? This is like seeing yourself in this game.
Okay, so now that I look at it, because the game got released in 2016, I believe. So when
10 years ago.
Yeah, like really old.
Gray-haired instantly. Wow.
Gray hair instantly. Yeah, so it's been a while. So I was 19 back then. Now I'm 29. So yeah, a lot of things changed, and the way I view life changed. So back then for me it was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna prove myself. That was my main thing back then. I want to prove myself. I want to get into this business. I want to show that games can be used in a different ways. Now I'm more like looking back at it, I'm like, okay, that was one way to deal with the trauma, basically. So, but mostly to answer your question, like seeing other people playing the game live in front of me, which doesn't happen as much right now. It happened a lot in 2017 and 2018, where we got invited to Gamescom, and I remember working 16 hours a day, almost like just standing next to the booth, seeing different people working there, coming and playing the game in front of me. So I've seen like almost 500 people playing the game, and the reactions really varied. Like I've had like your typical gamer with like the SWAT cosplay or whatever that would come by and be like, oh, he's Syrian, but would still play it, They would see the title and the picture and the style. They would be like, oh, this looks like Pokemon. I would like to try this game. And then all of a sudden, you're in the minefield, and there's the Syrian guy talking to you. And I bet like that person never thought they would ever have a conversation with a Syrian before, right? Like they were maybe isolating themselves from this whole situation. But now it's in your face, and that guy is next to you, right? So like I would see that guy, but by the end of him playing, he'd be like, "Oh, thank you for doing this, because I have had no idea about this, and all what I know about this is opinions on the news and what my grandmother says and what my father says. But now I have a way to talk to them about this, And I bet he was getting fed all this misinformation and all this media stuff that that was labelizing us as the evil people that are gonna destroy Europe or whatever. But now he played the game, and he could at least bring it up on a dinner. Like, even if he can't argue, he can at least like just say, you know what, I played this game, and this was this and this was that, and this is why these people go out of Syria. It's not a game,
This is you're already mentioning this. There are educational aspects, educational experiences with that. And what I find quite curious, I was giving also this game as an example again, when I would give talk in front of educators. And sometimes they would ask rather critical questions if this is a good experience for young people to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is something which I got quite often. Any thoughts on that?
So that's, I think, one of the main reasons why the game looks the way it looks, is to appeal to any age from 8 till 80. Does not really matter. And so I would say if it's for young people, absolutely it's for young people. What you're playing is just an experience of a human being. It's one story of billions of stories. So why would it not be something for kids? I guess that's the way to answer that question. Why would it not be? And if the answer is like it's too brutal, and it's like, then my whole life should be censored, right? I should not exist then, or this whole thing should not have happened, but it did. So now we're here, That's the thing. Like, if the whole world was silent since we've been massacred, like in my hometown in the 80s, all the way through until the Civil War stopped, basically, then why do we not get to hear at least one person's story, and not, with it just being neutral, without any political stance, right? Just the human behind, basically. And it is like the graphics are not there. I don't believe there is any blood either. Like, it's just metaphorical. Almost all of the game is metaphorical.
There's also the classroom version now with it, and some teaching material, I think, to talk through the experience. This is, I think, something which is super interesting also, to then take something, whether it's a book, whether it's a movie or a game like this, and then talk through it.
Yeah, the cool thing about the school version is you don't need to install anything. It's literally a browser version. We worked with the UNHCR. Causa Creations worked with the UNHCR to make that happen. So that's a cool thing, where the UNHCR can actually use that project to go to classrooms or to tell teachers about that an actual project like that existed. I kid you not, I was once in Vienna, and there were like kids going by, and they were like, "Isn't this guy the one from the game?" I was like, I felt so weird about it.
Oh.
I was like, oh wow.
Do you like? I'm always like a little bit torn when it comes to educational games. What is your take on that? Do you have any thoughts on when it can be, from a game design perspective, working well? Because sometimes educational games do not have the best reputation among children, for instance. But this obviously works really well. So what do you think? Why does this work well?
So I think the reason why it works because of the interactivity aspect of it. What is my opinion on educational games? Here's my thought. If kids are playing games anyway, regardless if there's educational games or no educational games, my question now to everybody in this world: would you rather to live in a world where there's educational games that your kids can use also in school, or no educational games whatsoever? So all the games they get to play are purely commercial, purely, what we see, Fortnite or whatever. And the answer for that, for me at least, is like I would rather have schools like invest in and get out of their like bubble since the 1700s of like, let's put a bunch of kids in a room, put those chairs with a table, and make them look at one wall where we can type on. Like, is that really reflecting the actual world where those people are gonna work in, where there's devices and AI and other tools that are, their hiring managers are, or their bosses are expecting them to know fully? I don't see that utilized unless like you go specialize in a certain section of the education, especially in Austria right now. Is, you get access to a computer in a classroom maybe if you are working in that direction, like computer science, or before that, like as a Lehre, maybe as like an apprenticeship when it's involved with IT. But I don't see it as much in other schools. And the question is, do you want to evolve or do you want to like just stay, I guess? I don't know. That's how I see it.
As a game developer, what are your workflows? So we're going now really basic. What do you do? What are your workflows? What do you use? What tools do you use? So super basic question. So we are
mostly, if I really enjoyed a game, I try to break it down to its base functions. And one challenge I like to do, and also, you know that, of course, like not every day you get to work on a project, right? So maybe in 2 years I get to work on one project. So one of the things that I like to do is if I'm playing a game, try to break it down on paper. All right, like what is working with this game? Why am I enjoying this game? And I try to break it down that way. And I try then to challenge myself and see, for example, if I'm enjoying a racing game, how would that same concept work on a tower defense game, and see how I could do that. And it's just on paper, right? Like I don't need to really know to be perfect in code. So sometimes I make like a prototype on paper and see if it's fun or not, right? And just for me, it's just for nothing commercial, just for me, just to know. And most of the times I get the best knowledge from two resources. One is actually working with other people who are knowledgeable and experienced. Two, from books, basically.
What books? I'm already this is already one of the questions I have.
I'm very bad with names. There's this book. I can give you the general premise of it. I forgot exactly what, but I think it's a popular book, The Lens of Game Development, or something like this, where it shows you the games through different lenses.
Is it The Art of Game Design?
The Art of Game Design. Yes.
And there he talks about a book of lenses. Yeah.
Yes.
By Jesse Shell.
I think that book just summed up especially in the beginning where they say like, don't say you're not a game designer. First rule of being a game designer is say that you're a game designer. I'm a game designer. I'm a game designer. I love that. I love that so much.
And one other thing, how do you become a game designer? Make games.
Make games.
This is also a very good one. No, very, very lovely. Any other books on your list? I'm always very curious about books. It can be also general books, which you really liked or inspired you. But we take every single book recommendation in this podcast like crazy.
Yeah. I understand that. Mostly, I think because I come from a whole different background. So here's what I realized coming to Europe. When I come and I got raised in Syria, it's a whole different way of raising. It's a whole different way of life. So when you come here and you realize, okay, whoa, these people are ahead of me, maybe 20 steps ahead of me, in the sense of like proper education. Maybe they got brought up in a really good way. They had really great parents, or they had the financial possibilities to, navigate the world in a way better than me. I saw this immediately and I was like, okay, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff. And till this day, I see that happening. So I be educating myself on simple things such as like attachment, right? Like there's a book called Attached from Amir, which is an Arabic name, but I don't know where he comes from. It's called Attached, and it explains the attachment theory in psychology. So there's the anxious attachment. There is the secure attachment, and there's the avoidant attachment. And sadly enough, that's what my therapist said. She's an Arab, and she treats a lot of Arabs in Austria. She said a lot of Arabs are avoidant. They have avoidant attachment. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna read about it. So yeah, that book really enlightened me a lot about a lot of sectors in my life, especially in terms of learning, in terms of improving, in terms of relationships, a lot of sectors of my life. So I guess my answer to you is the books recommendations that I would give are for everyone, but also especially like if you have that feeling that you live in a Western society maybe, or like a more, I don't know what to call it, where you might have that feeling of like, okay, these people are ahead of me. They have way more possibilities. I have to start from zero. What do I need to learn? And first thing is that you need to learn how behavior works. Behavior generally. Because there are habits that you pick up from just like growing up with like your parents or whatever. And you could change those habits. You could change that behavior. So yeah, I hope that's helpful for anybody who's listening. Like not just game development, but generally attachment or like psychology. I think it's interesting. Why do we do the things that we do?
Very nice. I go deeper there. What other things do you find interesting? Whether it's music or whether it's TV shows or films. Is there anything other which is you find inspiring, interesting, motivating, relaxing, whatever?
For relaxing, I really enjoy spas. I enjoy hot water and just like quality time. I guess for all of this to happen is like to be inspired, to be relaxed and all of that, you need to have good balance between your working life and your life. Generally, because if you don't have that balance, I do tend to just work all the time. And if I don't have that balance and someone check me, tell me, hey, slow down, which is my wife right now. She tells me like, okay, you've been working a lot. I can see myself even in my resting time working. And this could be problematic. And I think it's for me at least more interesting than music and more interesting like than anything is just to find quality resting time. And I think that is more doable if you can like structure your life in a way where you don't have to pay so much every month. Does that make sense?
I fully agree. Like, so the topic of mental health is something which is incredibly important, especially when you work in an environment which is, I would always call it like head focused. Very, like no matter what space you're working in. But I feel always like if I had a heavy day in terms of thinking and working maybe creatively, I love going to the mountains and doing something like which is like a little bit the opposite. So this is for me. And you already mentioned it, some sort of structure and so on and so forth. In the past conversations, we often had the topics of how to actually motivate yourself to get started, how to get into this creative space, how do you procrastination was a quite a topic which was mentioned quite often.
Yeah.
And you already were like certainly going into the direction of, can I call them routines? Do you have things that you find helpful, that are helping you?
In terms of like procrastination?
For instance, or general routines which are helping you?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. Because so let's start with procrastination, for example. Being an avoidant person, like with attachment, you tend to procrastinate because your attachment is not only to people, but also to things. Like I, for example, will say a lot that I want to learn things, right? But then I never initiate it because it's always like, later, maybe later. That's avoiding. I'm avoiding the learning or starting to learn, right? So one way that I found to help me with that was to take a cold shower during the weekdays. because I convince myself if I can have something like a cold shower, if I can start that, I could start and stop anything I want. So that was just a way to fool myself of thinking, okay, so how can I go to an extreme that I can barely handle, especially in winter, by the way? If I could do that, I could start and stop anything I want. And that's how I start my day. But on the weekend, I take only warm showers. So that's that.
This is such a great answer. I feel this so much. If you can tackle the cold shower, you can tackle everything.
Exactly.
All the challenges in your life.
It's a mental challenge because I don't know if you ever tried cold showers. Do you have you ever done that?
So what I do, and this is for me getting used to it, like I go mountain running, right? In autumn and so forth. And then I always try to, if there's a possibility, to go directly after the run into a cold lake. Ooh. So, and this is like going into a cold lake and just like trying to exist there for a minute. This is something which is so good. This is so weirdly awesome, but I cannot do cold showers. Cold showers are the worst. In a frozen lake, that's fine, but cold showers.
Honestly,
no.
I tried cold plunging, but no, it's so much easier than cold showers. You have it constantly annoying you with a cold shower. With the plunging, you kind of get used to it after, so you become numb basically. I wanted to ask you about just jumping into a lake, because I've had that feeling. Do you also feel like merging with nature? Is that a feeling you feel?
Maybe that's a good thing. So it's like I would not jump into it. I would really slowly, but very go straight in there. Mm-hmm. But like in a constant pace. Mm. But then you're really so for me, one of the things I always try, what is important for me, my brain is constantly working in the weirdest way. So there's always noise somewhere in there, and everything which is like breaking this noise for a second or two. This is so nice, and this is certainly something where all of a sudden you're part of the nature, like you described it, but in a different space. That's nice.
Yeah, I mean that exact experience have helped me in like the worst time in my life, where I was super lonely, living in Salzburg. Hashtag Salzburg lonely. It's very hard to make friends there, and just like going out and putting yourself in a lake was so relaxing. I felt like nature was my friend, basically.
Is this something you share where you're based at the moment, or is this?
Oh yeah, no, I basically live nearby Vienna, okay. And basically I could drop by Vienna and get out of there anytime I want. It's a really nice place.
Yeah. So, no, I lost a little bit.
No worries.
Okay. All right. So one of the big things which I noted, which you were talking about, I think, which seemed to play a special role in your life, which I also find super smart, are the roles of mentors. Can you tell us a little bit about mentorship, the importance of mentors in your life? And I suppose you are also a mentor now for many others. So how is that?
Give us everything. Yeah, mentors are everything, honestly. Because I am that person, or people who are like me, especially coming from Syria, you could easily lose it. You could easily lose your way. Just because of the lack of identity that it hits you when you arrive at a young age, and all of a sudden now everything is different. Even someone offering you coffee is different. People don't know how much it is different. It is so different. Everything you've learned is void, right? Everything that you've known about yourself is void. So to have a mentor that I could talk to anytime about personal stuff, not just the art stuff, not just work, but also about personal stuff, has helped me. And that mentor for me has always been Brian Main, the American illustrator who lives in Vienna. Even when I lived in Salzburg, he would literally pay my ticket to come to Vienna, and he would allow me to stay in his place. When I didn't have parents, or a brother, you know, like the rest of my family. He was that, right? And I'm still like super close to him, and I'm very thankful for him for a lot of the stuff that he taught me. Not just in art, but also like personal stuff. So mentor role as a refugee is a crucial role, and I cannot imagine if it was like a mentor that would have like God forbid, you know, taken advantage of me in any way or form. That would have been horrible, because I was vulnerable, you know. Back in the day, like I had no confidence, and I was like questioning. That's why I started with the identity stuff, right? Well, like I was 19, but there were things I was others were experiencing in their 13 here in Austria that I didn't experience until I was 24. Does that make sense? Like I lived my teenage years very later on in my life, because you have to imagine in Syria when the war started, I was literally being raised by games. Like I stopped my life. My life was on hold. It was on pause. Nothing else mattered other than playing games. That is it. Going to school, playing games. That was it. And to get all the freedom in the world, that is stressful. It is super stressful, especially when you see other people succeeding, and then you start comparing yourself to them. But then eventually you're like, we don't have the same basis. We don't have the same foundation. Like one of the things that I was beating myself up for, and still till this day, but not as much as before, is I always promised myself to be an academic. I've never got that far. Why? Because when you come here, you're literally losing everything. You lost all your education. You lost all the papers, right? And in my case, it was so that I lost my actual certificate. Like I lost it. So there was no way back. It is what it is. I had to accept it. And I started an apprenticeship at a slaughterhouse. So I really started because I couldn't get a job. That's the thing. I could not get a job with my old name. I couldn't get a flat. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get anything. No one wanted to hire me with my old name. Nothing was done with my old name, right? But eventually, a slaughterhouse was like, okay, we anyway need someone to work all the time for cheap. This is perfect, right? We're going to hire this guy. And it was like an IT apprenticeship. I'm sorry, I'm going into other topics. So I'm going to stop here just to check.
I'm like you have all ears.
All right. So, yeah, I worked in that slaughterhouse for 3.5 years, and or 3 years, I think. That was where Path Out was. In the beginning, it got developed, and then it got out. And literally, I had those 3 years where I didn't get any vacation. My vacations went into going on events with Path Out. So I was working constantly all the time. And I hated my job. I hated my job so much. And I really didn't. That really prevented me from growing. Like growing mentally, growing my skills, or socially even. All the people I was surrounded with had literally Nazi tattoos on them. So everything that I picked up from my German language, from my humor in German language, has been related to sexism, racism. So I literally don't use German as much because I hate the person that I became in that language. I don't want to, I kind of want to learn it from the beginning, which I'm doing right now, like by choice. Because before it was like, you must talk German, you must learn German. So I created a really bad association with the language, especially when every time you talk and you might use the wrong article, people have no mercy with you. They literally start talking in a very weird way to you, right? So this had really destroyed my passion to learn German for a while, and I stopped using it. I stopped using German altogether.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No worries. I was just surrounded by the wrong people at the moment. So having mentors, again to the point, is very important.
But I think it's very important to find the right circle who are empowering you and not putting you down.
That's stuff with humans, unfortunately.
Is there any other because mentors in general, as you mentioned, like one specific person who helped you out a lot. For me, mentors are sometimes people who, personally, I do have some mentors who don't even know that. So people also who inspire me. My secret mentors, is this something? Are there any persons you find inspiring for your work?
Oh yeah, and lately I got to work with as well. So I've always So when Pathog got released and we got invited to events, one of the very first event was Reversed. That was an event that used to be in Vienna every summer, I remember, or so, or I think every spring. Here where I first met Rami Ismail, who was on your show as well. And yeah, that person, you know, I still remember we hang out for a night, and I can't forget that night, right? I from that moment on, you know, that person, he's an Arab, you know, he made it in the games industry. I'm like, okay, that is what I need to be, right? And yeah, from that moment on, Rami Ismail became like a huge inspiration for me. And from then on, you know, when he made his podcast with Fawzi Mismara and Osama Dorias, those became also my mentors that I've never met, right? And lately, like since October, or basically I got the pleasure to work with Rami like together on the same team October last year, and just finished the project like I think last month we finished, or the month before that, I don't remember exactly, bad with dates. And yeah, the game will be the trailer will release soon, and I'm very excited for that. That was an amazing experience.
But we cannot talk about it yet, right?
I mean, we could talk about how, you know, anything that is not related to a title, but yeah, basically that is it.
Whatever you want to share.
Yeah. I mean, just working with Rami, like he's such a good leader, like an actual leader, because like there are people who are called leaders in their titles, but they never lead. But that person like literally was able to make it clear to everybody what their position was, and was able to like hear everybody's opinions, and like still manage to find time for everybody and making everybody comfortable, even during times where it wasn't comfortable, but we just felt super comfortable working with him as a creative director. I was working as a VFX artist with him on a project. So that was like, I never worked as a VFX artist before, so they took a chance on me basically, and I was like super thankful for that, because now I could proceed the career of being like a VFX artist on games, which is something I always wanted to do. Yeah, just working with that person was amazing, and I wish to work with Fawzi one day, and Osama Dorias and everybody else.
And now I have to like be pushy here, because I'm sure you are a mentor for others as well. How do you deal with that? How is this for you?
I don't think I am, honestly. I don't think I'm on that stage yet.
We haven't talked about this yet, and we are slowly running out of time for part one, and I think we need a second version of that anyway. But like we didn't talk about, for instance, your new projects where you're using YouTube and Twitch to talk about game development processes, to talk about to game developers and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You have a lot of followers and subscribers there, so I take it as it is. You are inspiring people. You might be the obvious or hidden mentor of many out there. And yeah,
I hope so.
No pressure.
I hope so. Of course, I hope so. But it's this curse of like, I'm learning. There's always better things to do, or like I can always improve on things. The whole idea of the whole thing, like with my YouTube, with my podcast, came right after a layoff that I had. It was tough times. I had a lot of anger and resentment and everything. And I was like, Jack, you need to channel this somewhere. I need to channel this somewhere. And one of the things that I never did since I came to Austria is to invest in myself, right? To just say, me. All right, it's my time now. I'm going to do my thing. One of the things that I was obsessed with back then is to the concept of learning and earning at the same time. So I started with this idea, let's learn. I was like, okay, let's do a let's learn closer to a let's play, and try to sell those courses that I'm attending as an affiliate, but with also focusing on it being genuine. And I was able to make an income from that. And from there on, I started learning VFX, right? That was one of the main things that I started learning. And I think after 3 months or so, I got offered the job with Rami. And I was like, that is the best thing I've ever done in my life, to just like invest in myself and just like believe in myself. Do something for me. Yeah.
This is perfect. This is really perfect ending sort of for part one of the
Nice.
our conversation. No, I think we would need to have a second one, a little bit of a longer one. We scheduled for 1 hour for this time. I think that's fine. Is there any pressing thing you still want to add though?
We'll see you in part 2. That's definitely one thing that I want to do. We'll see you in part 2. We'll talk more. There's a lot of stuff that happened behind the scene. I'm looking forward. You're making a book. Can you say that, or is that a secret?
It's actually like you can it's you can already look at the title and so on so forth in the bookstores. It's going to be released in October, hopefully. Like, fingers crossed. Let's see how this works. You will be part of it. You are part of it. But we've got to cut this out of the channel because this is still super secret, of course. But I have like 1 or 2 quick fire questions in the end.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Favorite game of all time?
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yes. Game dev tool you couldn't live without?
It's a tough one. Blender.
Oh, an underrated game you wish more people knew about?
Underrated. It's a tough one. I don't play so many. Wait, Blur. The racing game.
And last game that made you really cry or laugh out loud?
The last thing. Let me see.
Or any.
Okay, so I was watching a TV show and there's this actor who looked exactly like my brother.
Wow.
That made me cry and laugh so much.
Cool. Thanks so much for part 1 of our episode. We have to do a second one
Yes.
where we go a little bit deeper into some of the topics. But this was a very, very beautiful first getting to know you, to the Talking Dev community.
All right, now I'm going to interview you.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Can we make a 2-minute break?
Yes,
and
of course.
Then I'll get some fresh water, and then we'll directly jump into part 2.
Yes.
Into the second. We have now part 2, but this is the second podcast. Different one.
All right, see you in a bit. Be right back, guys. That's good.
Okay.
Perfect.
So quickly to my chat. So welcome everyone. Again, and like, can we have a huge round of virtual applause for Jack after this first recording? And yes, we want Jack back in a future episode.
Yes, Jack will be back, definitely. I'm really excited for part 2. Yeah, I will start. And yep. Hello, everyone. It's me, Jack, the Generalist. Today I have a special guest, Johanna. Introduce yourself.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
So my name is Johanna Pirker, and I'm a professor for computer science in Graz and also in Munich. So since July, I also took a professorship here in Munich at a technical university. And yeah, but I'm also like sort of in between, was computer science, game development, and try to bridge a little bit the different worlds in those spaces.
All right. Awesome. So take us through your childhood a little bit. Before all of this happened, how did that come to work?
This is quite interesting. So the academic path can be sometimes a little bit challenging, especially if you go into computer science. So one of the questions I tend to get asked are like, why am I even in this space? Because this is a space where women are still really underrepresented. And if I would have heard closely to the opinion of other people, I wouldn't be in that space at all. So, like, even though I might have had already some signs that I might be good in computer science, a lot of people told me to not study computer science.
Oh.
Yeah, this was quite interesting. But like, if I go really, really, really back, everything was there. So sometimes you get possibilities because of early access. And one of the earliest experiences and memories I have was me playing Prince of Persia from on the DOS machine of my father, which I was probably 2 or 3 years old. I couldn't write or read yet, but I knew what to enter on the DOS machine, the command line. And I suppose back then, like then being this realm of games, this first game, the prince saving the princess, Prince of Persia, right? The second game, or like all the other games like Zelda, you're supposed to save the princess. Super Mario, the plumber saves the princess. Everyone needs to save the princess. But it was like always like my world. Like I still had a lot of outside activities, but I was always really close to PC at all. I was never scared to use a PC because I think there's also something when you are on this DOS machine early on, you're never scared to break something because you broke it at some point anyway already. And then, like for games, it was just for me such a beautiful space to go into these worlds, to do things you couldn't do otherwise. And yeah, and at some points, even I remember it was like I was 12, 13, 14. I started building own homepage projects. This was back then a big deal because there was not a lot of tutorials out there yet. You didn't have YouTube or show yet back then.
Yeah.
I might be a little bit older than you are, so this might be like really, really old woman memories. But it was quite interesting to go to try out things, be a little bit creative. Also Visual Basic, which was a thing back then, but I didn't have a computer science education at school. Not really, a little bit, and it was not a lot of people being interested, whether neither in games nor in computer science at all in my environment. It was really just like a handful of people. So in the end, for me going to then really dare to start studying computer science, everything was actually sort of against that. And I still took the odds and then actually discovered during the studies what computer science actually is, how creative this can be, and that I can be good in this thing.
So 3 questions come in mind right now. One question is, how would you say has Austria evolved in the education system to include more computer science in schools from back then till now?
Since I'm really heavily in this space, trying to be very pushy that we need more computer science education in schools. It has evolved absolutely because like also the tech became way more accessible, because back then not a lot of people did have access to computers at all. Then not everyone had access to the internet at all. So this was something which was really back then something was slowly spreading. And now it would be way more accessible. So there is a lot of a movement to have something like Medienbildung, you would call it in German, education about media usage, which is important, but it's not the base, because it's quite interesting if you now, because since I grew up using a PC, I at least know what a folder structure would look like, how the general structure of a PC because of that would look like. And this is something, because everything got so accessible, which is good, comes also with the downside that everything is hidden, and just using a tablet doesn't make you good in technology. And this is what we see now with the new generations, that they are sort of good in using technology, but are missing really background knowledge, even heavy users. How does it work? How's the infrastructure? What then? Obviously, it comes with negative sides, because if you don't have the background knowledge, you cannot understand what could be benefits, but also problematic issues when using apps, systems, processes, and so on and so forth.
Okay, but why do you think that issue is like that, where like there's no proper background anymore, or they lack that proper background these days? Okay, but why do you
because
think that...
everything again is super accessible. The system design has changed again, which is good. It should be accessible, but there is this link missing to the education around this. So again, I would really strongly argue that in schools we would not only have to learn this media education, but actually basic coding skills, how understand how the systems work, because it's quite funny. We do learn in school so much about, so much, but about history, about the past, about us, our bodies, and so forth. But we like one of the worlds we're living right now, probably a majority of the day, which is the digital world. We don't learn so much. We only learn so little in schools.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, something we need to change.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do think also, like, because you mentioned back in the day, there wasn't so many resources and you had to dig down, right? I bet you were reading books. What were your resources back in the day?
Back then, magazines. It was quite fun now that you say this. So a lot of like those computer magazines, a lot of, and we had to, I don't know, if you would install a game, you had 20,000 floppy disks which you need to enter. And now, oh wow, you have floppy disk 47 out of 63. Go on, you're doing great. Like I can also remember like some of the games and even codes. You could find code to the games and to small programs printed in the magazine.
Wow.
But then at some points, some of the magazines would come with discs or with CDs. And this was something which was quite nice, where you can try out different demo games or things and explore a little. And I think if I try to recall, for instance, Visual Basic, I think many things I figured out by just trying to figure out, just to exploring and often breaking stuff. So there was also a lot of games where I remember trying to, hey, I would love this code not be brown, but to be, I don't know, violet. So you are looking in the file system and try to sort of break the game a little bit. And
wow,
yeah.
That's very interesting, because I can remember myself. Syria, for example, didn't allow any computers until the 2001s or something like that. So that is basically the first nation like introduction to computers, if you can imagine that. So I like the way I grew up. When I tell stories from the technology interactions that I had, like people in their 40s and in their 50s be like, oh, this is exactly how I grew up too. Like one of the things that I grew up with is like we went to people and we knocked on the door to hang out with. There was no like asking for permission or calling. No, we went there and we knocked on the door, right? That was the way to do it. And one of the main things that I want to bring back to games and computers is like, I did not have any internet access until very later on. And there will be like tools like 3ds Max, for example, where I would literally learn the same way you described. I would just F around, right, and find out. And so that is interesting that you also had to go through this. So you mentioned before that there were a lot of things stopping you from pursuing that as an education, like computer science.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So even though, so in Austria, we do have different sort of schools. So we have something which is called the Gymnasium, which is like focused on a very, I would say, general education. You have more dedicated schools, some dedicated to tech, for instance. And I was on one of those rather broad ones. Interestingly, it focused on languages. This is the thing I'm really terrible with. I'm like the worst person in trying to pick up languages. And it was like I did learn English and Italian and Latin. And then at some point, also later in my life, I'm Spanish. But so it was like I'm not sure if it was the perfect pick for my head or for my brain. But again, in the end, everything turned out perfectly. But so it was not something, I don't know. I was not particularly good in school. Also not in math, by the way. So I had to have help and tutors. Also for my for my finals during high school. And this is quite interesting because then it came really with a switch. So many people told me not to study computer science because it's not something for you. You're not so good in math, and so on and so forth. And in retrospect, because I had a lot of thoughts why it was happening that way, even though I was doing small little programs, which could have been a sign that this is something for me, that people just did not know what computer science actually is. This is not something back then. I'm not sure if it really changed a lot now. I think it's still a little bit undereducated how broad computer science is actually. Also things like we do have those hype topics, right? We do have at the moment everyone is talking about AI. Right, but actually we're doing AI research since such a long time, and what we are talking about right now in the news is such a tiny part of what is possible or is happening out there, and everyone is jumping on those topics and pretending to understand what is going on, and this is really dangerous. That's why I'm like always trying to be a little bit protective that we do need to understand a little bit better the fields, because also computer science itself, it's such a broad field. And just saying, oh, you're not good in math in your high school, computer science is not something you're going to be good at. This is just really, really weird. So in retrospect, I think one of the major issues was that nobody actually understood what computer science is. That's why I'm also pushing. And still.
That's so interesting. You know, I've also thought about the math part and that I would never be good in computer science. Although, like, if I would get an academic chance, that would be the number one thing that I would pursue, right? Computer science. But can you unpack that a little bit? Like, there's two things to unpack here, right? When you said it's dangerous when it came to AI not to understand what computer science is, I would love to unpack that, but I would also like to unpack the point that we just discussed, which I forgot right now.
I can add one thing about math, which in the meantime, because the math thing is something, by now I love math. It's something, again, in school, I probably was not really good in many things in school, but I do feel also in retrospect that maybe the way my brain works could have been supported better with other ways or other tools. But again, that's also a different train of thought. And then all of a sudden, the moment I did study at the university, where the math level is way higher, but you're actually learning in a different way. And you are exposed to other problems, and you are exposed to problems which are directly applied to really useful examples. And it was just, I think, 6 months after I started studying computer science, I was a tutor in math for high school students in their finals.
Wow.
This was such an interesting twist. Interesting, mostly girls, because I think I don't know why, but I think it was a different level of trust. But it was this interesting twist from me being in need of having tutors for my finals versus switching to being the tutor with and having no problems with math at all anymore, just because the problems were and the solutions were maybe discussed in a different way.
yeah, they were more applied, they were more direct. You've had the dopamine rush of like, why am I doing this, and then actually having it applied to the issue that you're trying to fix. For me, maths is very something that I'm really interested in, especially when I'm doing shaders and visual effects. Like like when I got taught what sine is, like the sine wave, simple thing, in school, and I would have those like on paper, or like what do you call those two things to solve equations? So like for the test, right? They would tell you this is what's gonna come to the test, and you're gonna have to solve this on paper. I never understood what sine wave was, and it never made sense for me. I just went through it all the way till the end. But when I see it on a like visually on a shader, I could tell I understood it immediately, instantly. I was like, okay, this is what this thing is. And I think it's this direct application. Like even like we talked about games in education, but there's also the part of like, let's take those elements of in maths and try to apply them in an Unreal Engine. It's for free. Like, let us teach the students how to use this on a job. I feel that's very important.
And this is like, for instance, for my tutorials with my with the high school students, I was playing poker with them. Cool. And started to explain probability. Or for like here in Munich at LMU, I was teaching computer graphics, and we tried to apply many of the problems. Computer graphics is also heavily math focused, and then try to explain all the things in a very simple Unity application. And I don't know, again, like just seeing those things really helps sometimes. And again, we don't need to make education complicated just for the sake of having it complicated. I honestly still believe that having things which are difficult are important because they are challenging us, making us think, and so forth. But if there are things which help us understand to solve those more difficult problems, we should use everything we get. And the next thing, I think, which is very tremendously different in the education in school versus university, but this is also just, I think, the sense of growing up and that you need still the space from school. But at the university, everything was way more around your own freedom, how to sometimes teach yourself the things. That sounds now weird, but you get the basic introduction in the lectures, and then you get often even more complex problems for the homework, and you have to think. And honestly, especially in engineering, we all very often solve things together and talk this through.
You mean software engineering, right?
And I made for like I'm talking about the math problems now.
Okay, now I meant because you mentioned engineering in
it's software engineering.
Software
sorry,
engineering.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but in general engineering, one thing, the way how we learn to think and how to solve problems is in teams. This is so interesting. Cool. This is very different to other studies. Where sometimes in humanist studies, sometimes, again, what I've learned is that many of the problems are up to you. And here we have so many group works and project works. So we often have problems which are supposed to be solved together in groups of 3 or 4. So also for the math problems, sometimes in groups or not, but the best way how you learn is if you explain it to others.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, I could see the same thing in game development too, right? Where your best work would be when you're working with teams, but to also include that in the educational factor, I feel like that is priceless, honestly. And so you mentioned computer science is very broad, right? Like the term. What would you say to someone who just listens to computer science and thinks math? Like, what would you say how broad it is? Or AI?
It can be everything. So it's like one field is, for instance, HCI, human computer interaction interfaces, where we try to bridge problems between how we as human would interact with the machine. So this is something, especially in the realm of AI now,
Yeah.
how we collaborate, how we can use it for good, and so on and so forth. So those are typical problems there, where we try to really focus on the human side of everything, because this is something which got a little bit lost at some point. In the very beginning,
Capitalism.
Everything was really tech focused.
Yeah.
It was not so much capitalism. It was also just, hey, we have this tech. Let's build crazy solutions, which nobody actually necessarily needs, but
The
just for the
buzzword.
sake of
Yeah.
just for the sake of making cool tech
Yeah.
work. This is just us being a bunch of nerds trying out things. But then if you put the human in the loop, this is, for instance, this field of HCI, you have, again, what I always try to underline, that computer science can be and is already used in every single discipline. So no matter what field you're working in, you can have a good and positive impact for so many fields. You can create solutions for medical image recognition. Again, if you think of the realm of AI, one of the most interesting solutions is, for instance, to use it for, this is also where a lot of the algorithms are based, is image recognition to early recognize tumors and help people. Or again, for automatically recognize dangerous situations, toxic behavior in video games. This is what we are doing, for instance,
Cool.
to identify patterns. So you can use the same things for so many, or similar things, similar strategies for so many interesting things. And so the group I'm leading in Graz, again, like I'm now in Munich in Graz, but if I talk about the Game Lab in Graz, so for instance, we started with like so much research in the realm of games and spaces around that, and we tried to show how this realm of game development, computer science, can be used for different SDGs. So we mapped all the sustainability development goals. Those are 17 goals given by the UN to hopefully make the world a better place, or not so much worse, let's put it that way. And we tried to map all the projects basically onto those goals, to actually show how broad, not even computer science, but even game development can be. So we had games for energy education, for education in general, for consumption overviews, for educating about the microbiome, for general industry applications, to make some processes more safe, to teach about different apprenticeships, because this is also something which is a little bit overseen these days, how cool apprenticeships can be. And games or virtual reality experience can be a very good tool to make people experience things, visualize things.
Yeah, especially like the microbiome part of it. Like, especially, before COVID, I would have seen that becoming like very important. But also like fake news these days, I feel like that could also be applied there too, in sense of like, let's make a game about fake news. I think Polycular is doing that with Escape Fake. I think they're doing a good job in that way. They're also Austrians. I worked with them back in the day. But yeah, it's all helpful to make a mini version of reality, especially in VR. I guess VR is a huge thing, right, when it comes to studies and research, or was?
This is, I would still say it is, because this is like my main love project or main love direction. So this is something which we're doing so early on. We also, like back then, you used the cave environments, and then we had the early devices from this democratization of the VR developments with the early Oculus development kits. And I honestly, I still believe, even though like I have to fight with a lot of people on that, but VR gives me so many things which no other technology before did to me.
Yeah.
And like I still really fight for those educational experience. This is, I think, also the main reason why what part of my research became known, which was this virtual reality physics laboratory, because back then in 2011, 2012, I went to MIT, which is this elite university in the US.
Yep.
This was ranked number one, and I was really grateful to be able to study there at some point. And there's one part to my history, to my childhood, which is quite interesting, because back then when I was probably 10ish or so or earlier, I wanted to become a physicist.
Cool.
This did not turn out well, but actually, and then I, in my whole high school experience, I don't think we did a single physics experiment. So we sometimes you have. I had this in the talk with Rami and in this podcast, and it's quite interesting. He mentioned this teacher who really pushed him in the most positive way and motivated him. I also had very good experience. I also had not so good experiences, which also shaped me. And I would say in the end, like some of the experiences which I had, which were not so good, also shaped me in a good way.
Yep.
Because like everything which is happening to me, which is not so good, I try to take and then try to make a solution around that. Like how could it be that someone like after me will not have an experience like this? So many of the tools I researched or developed were sort of tools to support teachers, to give students also like a little bit of autonomy to do physics experiments, for instance, without the need of having access to this fancy physics laboratory.
True, yeah. I mean, that's super helpful, right? Like, what if the things that you need to play with are super expensive or super dangerous either? Like having that in VR experience.
And this is the MIT project. So basically, when I was at MIT, and then me trying to become a physicist when I was young, but then sort of did not go that way because maybe of missing opportunities, and then seeing those fancy laboratories they would have. Like I think one of those labs would cost $1.4 million or something like this. And I was, this is the way how you can learn. This is the way how a little like tiny portion of people in the world can learn physics. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then we started again, also together with this physicist, really cool one. He was PI of the Voyager mission, so the supervisor at MIT, and he was a gamer also. He was back then around 70-ish, but played Skyrim.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
And together we started to take those experiments and digitalize all of them.
Wow.
So basically that you have the possibility first in VR, that you can actually go in VR into this physics laboratory. You can make all the things which are usually unseen, seen, the field lines, to better understand what is happening when you have this magnet and the coil, and see all the field lines to understand the physics behind it.
Yeah.
But you can make dangerous experiments, impossible experiments, expensive experiments.
Yeah.
And then when COVID hit, we thought, oh wow, we created something in VR which is super useful for those couple of people who have VR. So we put everything into a web browser. So you can now go into this lab and try out all those experiments for free, basically, in a web browser without any need to have any other tech.
Is there any guidance? Like, did you make, different recipes that you could follow, or do you just need to know the knowledge as a physicist? Like, I guess my question is this for everybody or just for physicists?
So this is I think it's very accessible. It has also now computer science experiments and so forth. It's called Maroon. And again, everyone can try it out in a web browser. But the interesting thing here, this was never designed to be a game or anything. This was really designed as an experiment. So you are using It is a tool. Sometimes teachers would come and help you go through some
That's
experiments.
cool.
There are some experiments which you can find online, but actually everything is really for you as like a simulation, basically.
Yeah.
But we have a second project, which is the contrary. We got a big mega grant for that. So the Epic gave us money to start making this physics escape the room educational experiences.
Wow. Cool.
And this is now the opposite. It comes with, it does not follow so strictly, because in Maroon everything is actual physics, everything is all the real calculations, which is super heavy in the background.
Yeah.
And many awesome people. Like I think by now, I think it's an open source project. So
Awesome.
I suppose 100 people or so have contributed things to that by now. It's crazy. And the other one is Chimera. And this is a little bit the opposite, where you, again, everything is not so strict in terms of the real science, but it shows you through guiding you through a little bit of an escape the room experience, where you learn about small math concepts, small how to put together an engine concepts, a little bit how to start the engine with the magnets. And this is just designed to motivate you, to get you excited, to get you thrilled about how cool physics or engineering itself can be.
Yeah. Wow. This is such a cool project. Is it done already? Can people check it out?
Yes, both. Both are on. So one is on Steam and one is just on the website maroon.tugards.at.
We will definitely link those. It's such an interesting field. Like, I really envy you to a degree, because these are such interesting projects. And you know
I know your projects. I mean, I think both of us are working just in a very cool environment and doing really cool stuff.
It would be so cool to work together one day. I mean, honestly. But anyway, back to AI. How come it's dangerous to not know what computer science really is and just go by the labels, I guess, or by the hype?
Okay. So this is like a Pandora's box. So what I find a little bit sad these days, again, there are many important complex topics, especially in the game dev realm. There are so many important issues to be discussed, especially like about the rights, especially about how it's being used, But for instance, what I find quite concerning, again, we are in the realm of AI since such a long time and using it for so many different application cases. And I got on so many block lists because people are just randomly starting to block people who just have AI in their in their, I don't know, in any description or anything.
Interesting.
Even though, for instance, we're trying to use AI systems to identify toxic behavior. And this is quite interesting that there's so little understanding of what AI is, and what people are scared of is the generative AI, which is a sub category of the whole AI space. And just labeling everything at AI, which also has the name intelligence in it, which is also very concerning to many of us researchers, because artificial intelligence, that is called intelligence, is something which many of us would probably not agree with and would strongly argue with. And this is, I think, making so many people scared, because there are so many things happening at the same time. And again, there are things which we need to talk about and which are, yeah, absolutely. But again, it should not be reduced to that space. And that's where I feel there's a little bit of a knowledge lack or missing understanding of what the whole realm is and what the actual problems are. And I'm not always like this fan of just blocking away potential problems, because I feel those are the things and the people who are in the end being left behind. Again, so what, for instance, a lot of researchers are doing these days are trying to research ways, because that the way we are working will change? I think we all see this. There's already so many people who are using, just like how ChatGPT already changed so many of the processes, but accelerated so many of the processes.
True.
And I think the most important thing is to understand how to use it for, like, in a proper way, how to use it for good, how to, and again, this is what also many of my colleagues are trying to understand, how this human machine component to help us to use the machine-based tools in the best possible way. And many studies are already showing that we can be more creative and more, not only productive, because we're talking about production all the time, but especially like even more creative when we work together with AI assistants, for instance. And I think this is, again, something which we can use in the most positive way. But no question that questions like the rights of the data which got used in the first place, and so forth. This is something which obviously are very, very big topics to be discussed. But also there are very like tiny AI models, which are a little bit underrepresented these days, but which are super important. So tiny models which you can train yourself with, which have way lower energy consumption, which is also one of the really, really big topics, and which are only trained on the specific data you want to have it to be trained with. And again, I think sometimes the voices who are then pressing on some of the issues are sometimes a little bit louder than voices who are showing potential good solutions for those problems already. And that's why I feel the conversation and this discussion around this topic is a little bit, I think sometimes a little bit, not reflected on all sides. But again, the next thing is like what we had in the past with every hype. There's so much scam around this as well, and those are also super loud voices. So, and this is the weird thing now. Voices like mine are getting blocked away because of the other voices being very loud and then being put into the same category. And this happened to me with the metaverse, because we are doing research on virtual worlds, right? So the metaverse, the blockchain discussions, of course, was also
which is also computer science.
And then now the AI topic. And again, all so huge topics, and then you're just being put into one box. And AI is the most complex topic, though.
Yeah, because it's affecting everybody's ability to work, I guess. And those are people who were never in touch with technology. You know, we're talking about artists, we're talking about writers. You know, who could write on a paper or who could draw on a paper. We're talking about people maybe that never had computer other than writing emails and stuff like that. So I guess the question here is how do we make that complex thing approachable in explanation as well? Like you explained local AI that you can train on your own. Okay, how approachable is that in comparison to ChatGPT? And the answer is not at all. It's not approachable at all. You need to dig, right? You need to understand what docs are. You need to understand what llama is. You need to understand what Hugging Face is. You have to dig and get all those resources and make them work. And if they don't work, it's frustrating. But ChatGPT, you literally can open the website and you're there.
This was such a smart move from OpenAI. This is we talked about this before, that we have all of a sudden something which is so accessible. So everyone is just mainly focusing on that, and it's just being discussed in the chat as well. And because of that, you have a couple of companies having a lot of power, which is also quite an interesting challenge to take. And there's something which I would also add there. So we are putting a lot of thought efforts into the realm also, how to get more of this autonomy back to Europe also, because a lot of things in the
Yeah.
AI realm, and also where the data is coming from, where the data is stored, but also like where the main players are sitting. This is either the US or also China is super strong in there.
Yeah.
And in Europe, we are losing a lot of autonomy also because of that. So that's why there's a lot of efforts to strengthen research in this field, also in Europe, and to help also companies who want to build their own models, smaller models, accessible models, safer models, and so on and so forth, also in Europe. So this is a huge topic. This is you opened the Pandora's box. Why are you doing this?
Because it's interesting for me.
Yeah.
No, I do think there's a misconception. There's miscommunication around the topic a lot, and I'm glad that I get to hear it from someone in computer science, like as a teacher, as a professor, because you people have been involved in this way before any of this hype have ever existed, and to hear your perspective on it I think is valuable. And just because I guess a lot of us don't have the experience to navigate this topic, so having you on talking about that, and also to see it through your perspective as a researcher, right? You're literally researching this field since decades, right? AI. And it's just a small part of computer science, which is being occupied by everything else now. It's like, yeah.
And this is something which I sort of find a little bit frustrating sometimes. It's not me, but also other researchers in this realm. Again, that you're trying to make something good out of that, and then like you're saying, I try to explain it, the positive sides, but of course also the challenges we're going to face. But we're all going to face them together, and so it would be important to support finding solutions. And then it feels so weird to be constantly blocked away. And this is a very weird time, that while trying to explain things, just because you're doing this already for some long but very different place actually in this realm, that you're still being blocked away sometimes.
I mean, I guess like we need mediators, in the sense of people who are curious from both sides, almost like the technical artist role, basically. Like on my podcast, I have artists on. They're all afraid of AI, right? So to have someone from computer science that could say, all right, we can bridge the gap here. Maybe we could say, maybe don't block everybody that has AI in their title, or maybe just let's all work together to make that, I don't know, new creation, like a car that everybody will drive soon and have a seatbelt,
A friend of mine did create a very cool app for pictures, where she wanted to create a safe space for artists to upload the pictures without having the fear that those are being used for training.
Cool.
I think it's called Kara.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow. She's a friend of yours. Cool.
Yes,
yeah.
she's fantastic.
Yeah.
She's coming from the photography realm.
Yeah.
She has also very interesting opinions on the thoughts.
I would love to have her on, honestly,
also,
because I was a huge fan of the website, and especially the story, like how it caught up like very quickly, and then she had all those bills to pay.
Yes. No, like all of a sudden it was so popular, but of course, like setting up a server, having heavy traffic, and having to store a lot of art is intense.
Yes.
But yeah, she's fantastic. Also, her work as an artist, as a photographer, she did covers for Vogue and so on so forth.
Wow.
So she's very good, and I think there are really interesting ways also as an artist, like if you mention to mediate there, I see the fear to be replaced, but if you have your creative style, your creative vision, and so on and so forth, this is something which is so unique, which again, AI by itself, AI cannot tell jokes by itself, but you can become a better joke teller by working with AI. And this is like one of those approaches, because again, it will not replace us, but it can accelerate a lot of processes. And I think the best solution is to learn how to work with it in the best possible way. Because also tools like Houdini and so forth, they're heavily using procedural generation, which is also a tool, like an algorithmic tool coming from computer science to speed up the process of creating artistic works or environments and so forth. So this was also something which did speed up processes. And there's a lot of tools. I mean, we see it with Photoshop and so forth already, and also Unreal Engine. Tim Sweeney already mentioned that they're working on trying to rethink a little bit this concept of scene graphs, which is the base of how to build a two-dimensional or especially a three-dimensional image representation, and how to rethink a little bit those processes based on AI-based concepts. And this is quite interesting if you follow up the processes to see how it can be useful for you. But of course, be arguable and discussive because, in the topics which are ethical difficult. Again, the rights or what I find, for instance, quite difficult is this is because it's the same with coding. Like if you use now ChatGPT and so forth, or Copilot, you will also get to be exposed to my code because I use GitHub, for instance, which is also open source. So I live this open source spirit a little bit. So everyone can access my code. Also the trained models are used with based on this now. And if I talk to programmers these days in companies, computer scientists, it's very clear that the current tools, that the current models are sometimes comparable with the state of juniors, with junior coders.
Yeah.
Will they replace them? To everyone I talk to in this industry, no. You need the human capital. You need what you said earlier in the previous podcast. There's so much different creativity. There's so much different thoughts coming just by being part of the process. The process itself will change. It will become accelerated, will be a little bit different. But again, and it's so important to also as a company see that because it's creative capital and it's capital to be supposed to be trained also, because if we would start replacing all junior positions, there will not be any seniors at all. But this is, again, coming back to the positive side. I know I'm talking now a little bit positive. I just try to show the potential. But what we are trying to work on right now, for instance, are tools, how to use those AI tools and models to help you become better in learn faster, learn specifically for your special needs.
Listen, that is 1,000% correct. Like, here's an example I'm going through right now. Right, so I'm trying to replace Adobe programs with open source programs. So what I do is I have a local AI installed, right? Saving the environment, yay. So what I do is I give it the documentation of Substance Designer, and I also give it the documentation of Material Maker, which is an open source alternative. And I'll be like, okay, give me all the replacement for the nodes, and I would just learn from that, because they might just have a different name. That is all. And so I'm just giving it all those resources. It's giving me the results back. Not always correct, by the way, like 80% correct or something. It's still good. It's still good enough to... It's like having someone who knows 50% about everything. You know? You can't trust it 100%, but you can get there to make your own thought by the end of it. You can make your experience from it. But the danger with that, I think, is a lot of people use it, especially in relationships, or let's just talk in relationships, right? Like, who's right, who's wrong? Look, ChatGPT told me this. ChatGPT must be right. And it's like, the thing is about ChatGPT is it will hallucinate an answer. It will answer. That's the problem. It will answer. How is it going to answer? Which bias is being used? All of these things behind the scenes that we don't know. And like you said, it's all American. Like, what are the biases here? A special thing we've seen that highlighted a lot with DeepSeek. Oh, it's very Chinese government oriented, and it's like as if the US one is not, you know.
But it's quite interesting because the bias is also, since it's using all of our historical data, and what are we, all isms are combined in one data source. It's brilliant. But again, those are things which is important to work with. That's why it's super important to sort of expose oneself. This is like always what I try to say. Try to see how it works, understand it. That's why I'm very pushy again about computer science education early on, because if you understand how this model works, and the basic is not rocket science. If you go deeper, there can get nasty. But like, to understand the base, this is not rocket science, and we could teach this in schools. And if you learn how this is used and what data it is based on, and there's actually like a little bit of a probability system sometimes, then you understand what is a hallucination, that you need to trust, that you cannot trust the outcome, that you need to fact check. So maybe the research, for instance, if you want to research to a specific topic, can be accelerated, but I still need to double check, and I need to know what to double check, how to double check, and what can I trust and what can I not trust. Because it was so very obvious in the first models, because the first models were purely text-based, so it did not have any logical training at all, so you could not do math. And all of a sudden people were, hey, this is so stupid, it cannot like calculate 2 plus 2. Yes, the system which is just trained on text cannot calculate. Right. and this is again, it's not rocket science, but we need to bring this knowledge to the people, because how can you work with a system which you cannot, you don't need to know like the base things, but at least to understand so much that you understand where the results are coming from. You don't need to know the nasty, all the gritty details, the structure and so on and so forth, but at least the basics.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are scared about that. And we have 4 minutes left, and that's where I turn to my guests and I ask if there's anything they would still like to talk about or promote.
Yeah, no, it was a very, I didn't see the AI discussion coming, and I don't want to sound either too positive or too negative. I do have a very, I think, neutral opinion on that, and I just try to explain always how it's being used, and that there are a lot of issues, like you said, bias, discrimination, the missing transparency, the big companies, the accountability, the ethical concerns about the data, the privacy issues, the potential job losses.
How fast it's going too, that the laws can't keep up with it and everything. Yeah.
But again on the environment, energy. But on the other hand, that there are so many positive chances. And I think since everything is going so fast, we sort of need to work together to try to understand also the potentials, but also the potential problems together as fast as possible.
All right. Yeah, that is amazing. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to talk about games, but if you're going to do a part 2, then I have to do part 2 too. All right. So I'll thank you for joining us and for accepting the invite, and let the viewer like kind of know where they can find you if they have any questions.
Yes, thank you so much. So like, if you want to talk about those topics, I sometimes give also tiny lectures, they're called. They're supposed to be 15 minutes, but the last one was 4 hours, where I sometimes talk about computer science topics on Twitch and on the YouTube channel, both on Joy Prink.
All right, I'll make sure that I'll link all of this. I'll talk to the viewer just a little bit to say goodbye to them, and then we'll talk for like a minute or two. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll leave all the links down below. If you liked it, like it. If you disliked it, and let me know. Dislike it and let me know why you disliked it. And let's have a discussion in the comments. All right, everyone. Jack the Generalist here and Johanna. We both say bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. That was awesome. Thanks for doing this.
I quickly give a shout out again. So I think now it works again. So everyone in my chat, this is, you're still here.
Yeah, still here.
This is the wonderful Czech. Again, we had now 2 podcasts in one. And please, there's now here somewhere at the very top, this join us in following Czech symbol. So please make sure to press this tiny heart.
Oh, thank you.
To follow Czech. He has also a YouTube channel, which I quickly need to also post into the chat since we're here. Or a lot of really cool podcasts like these are happening. And this is now in the chat. And if you want to look at Path Out can, for some reasons, cannot be played in Germany.
Oh, I've noticed,
yes.
by the way.
This is quite interesting. But there's the itch.io page where you can play the school version.
That is so sad that you can't play it in Germany.
I was mentioning at the Science Busters show. The Science Busters are this Austrian comedian show, basically, and I was invited to the podcast, and of course I mentioned Path Out, and then they made me aware that it's not playable in German. Like, what?
So sad.
Then I got this Plan B link.
Maybe someone can fix that.
Yes.
Maybe we can reach out to someone. All right, thank you so much for your time. I need to go and check on the cats because I forgot to feed them. Johanna.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.